Okay, get this. Imagine you're walking along this gorgeous Australian beach, Somerton Beach, yeah? It's December 1948, sun's coming up, birds chirping, and bam, you find a body.
Oh, wow.
But this isn't your usual like beach tragedy. This is the Somerton Man.
Hmm.
And get this, his story has confused investigators like forever, over 70 years. We're going deep today into this academic article all about this mystery.
What makes this case so strange is that we don't even know who this guy is. Usually you at least have a name, a background, something, right? Here, nothing. It's like he just poofed into existence and then left us with this puzzle.
And if the missing ID wasn't enough, there's all this other weird stuff. People saw him the day before just chilling on the beach, maybe even asleep, no fighting, no obvious reason he'd be dead. Just a well-dressed guy who suddenly vanished.
Right, that's what gets me, that he was so well dressed, they figured out he was probably in his 40s, in shape, good clothes, the whole 9 yards, like someone who cared about how he looked.
Yeah.
But then he goes and hides his identity. Doesn't that seem like a contradiction?
Totally. It's like he wanted to disappear, but also wanted to be found, almost like he was leaving clues on purpose. Which leads to the whole question of who was he? A lost soldier? A husband who ran off? Someone hiding from their past?
Oh, there were theories galore. Especially back then. Australia, right after the war, tons of immigrants, everyone worried about, I don't know, society changing and the Cold War starting up. All that probably messed with how people saw the Somerton Man and made up stories about him. Some even wondered if he was like a refugee or got caught up in Cold War spy stuff.
Wow. Shows how much the times we live in affect how we see things, huh? Okay, but let's get back to the actual clues. What about that suitcase?
Oh yeah, the suitcase. Found at the train station. Bunch of stuff inside. Some had tags saying Keen or Keen, which seemed like a big deal at first. They even found thread in there, an exact match to what was used to fix the Somerton Man's pants.
So, we finally have a name. Mystery solved.
Hold your horses. Remember, back then rationing was still a thing. Lots of secondhand clothes. So names on tags could mean anything. Plus, because of the Cold War, it was a pain to track people across countries.
All right, so names are out for now. But then things get really wild. We're talking poetry, we're talking secret codes. It's Tamam Shud time.
Tiny piece of paper, right there in his pocket. Just 2 words on it. Tamam Shud means like the end in Persian. Turns out it was ripped from a super rare book of poetry, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam.
Persian poetry. In Australia in the 1940s? Come on, who makes this stuff up? This is like straight out of a spy movie or something.
It does sound crazy, right? But that Rubaiyat book, it was a huge deal back then. The translation by Fitzgerald, everyone was reading it. Carpe diem, this exotic vibe, a little bit of rebelling against how strict things were back then. It was more than just a book. It was like a, I don't know, cultural moment.
So our Somerton Man, he was into poetry. Now that's interesting.
For sure. Now we're not just dealing with some random guy. This could be a smart, cultured dude.
Was he trying to say something with that poem? A code? A love letter? Or just like his philosophy on life?
Those are some great questions. And I bet those questions were driving all those code breakers nuts, the ones trying to figure out what that clue meant.
You bet. That little Tamam Shud note, it was like a magnet for anyone who thought they could crack the case. Theories flying everywhere. Secret affairs, fake identities, spies, maybe even the mob. Everyone had their take on the Somerton Man. And then, get this, they found a copy of the Rubaiyat. Not just any copy, but the one that Tamam Shud note was ripped from.
Wait, seriously? They found the actual book? That's nuts. It's like finding a needle in a haystack.
It was a huge break, really got the investigation going again. But there's more. This copy had faint pencil marks on the back cover.
A secret code. In a poetry book. This just keeps getting weirder. So would they like figure out the code? What did it say? Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? People tried. Tons of them. But nobody's cracked it, for sure. Some thought it was a message, a love letter, maybe even a suicide note, all hidden in poetry. But without a key, it's still a mystery, just like the man himself.
Man, so much for easy answers. But think about it. If it was a code, who was he even sending it to? And why be so secretive about it?
Yeah, makes you wonder, right? Some folks pointed to the whole Cold War thing, thought maybe he was a spy, using the code to talk to other spies.
That's definitely a popular theory. Mysterious guy, dead on a beach, secret code. Sounds like a Cold War spy movie, right?
It totally does. But we got to remember that everyone's kind of freaked out about the Cold War back then. The Petrov affair, that Soviet spy who switched sides in '54, really ramped up the fear of communists sneaking around. So yeah, that probably affected how some folks saw the Somerton Man case.
Makes sense. So the fear of the unknown, all that Cold War stuff, probably changed how people saw things. But not everyone went with the whole spy idea, right?
Oh no, not at all. Some people saw him as more of a, I don't know, a tragic figure.
Yeah.
Maybe a refugee running from something, trying to start over in a new place. Maybe erasing his identity was like a desperate move to get away from his past.
That's an interesting way to look at it. So we got these two main stories, right? The mysterious spy versus the guy just trying to survive. Crazy how the same evidence can mean such different things depending on how you see it.
Yeah, that's the thing about looking back at history. We always see it through today's lens,
Hmm.
our own opinions and all that. The Somerton Man just shows us that history is never simple. Even hard evidence can have lots of different meanings.
True. Okay, but about that Rubaiyat book, they actually destroy it later on. How could they do that?
Yeah, it's frustrating, isn't it? We don't even know how it happened. Just another weird thing in this already weird case. Makes you think, what else was in that book?
Yeah.
What could we have learned if it was still around?
Adding insult to injury. But get this, even with all the setbacks, the missing name, the unbreakable code, the destroyed book Detective Feltus, the one who worked on the case, never gave up on the Somerton Man. He kept looking for answers, even after he retired.
Yep, he did. The Rubaiyat thing really stuck with him. He spent years trying to find an exact copy of that book, thought maybe it'd have more clues.
Years later, why do you think he was so obsessed with this case, even after all that time?
I think it's because mysteries are just so powerful. We humans, we need to find answers to make sense of the world. The Somerton Man, even though we don't know how it ends, it speaks to something deep inside us. Reminds us that there are still secrets out there, stories waiting to be told, and that even when things seem impossible, the search for truth can keep us going.
It really makes you think, that this detective spent so much of his life on this case, even after retiring, shows how much this mystery grabs people, even now, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's not your everyday true crime thing, is it? It's not just about solving the crime, it's about, I don't know, figuring out this guy's whole life, like putting together a puzzle, but half the pieces are missing.
It's almost like the Somerton Man wanted to stay a mystery.
Yeah, there's a thought, isn't it? That's actually something the article talks about. The author thinks maybe, just maybe, the Somerton Man, by doing all this weird stuff, was making a puzzle for us to solve way later on.
Whoa, hold on. He wanted to be remembered as this, unsolvable mystery, but why? What would be the point?
That's the big question, isn't it? Was it his way of giving the middle finger to the world? Or did he want to control his story even after he was gone? Or maybe it was a message like, hey, look deeper. There's more to things than you think. The author really wants us to think about it, to engage with the mystery on a whole other level.
So after all this time, all the theories and dead ends and lost evidence, what do we actually know about the Somerton Man?
Honestly, not much. We can guess about where he came from, why he did what he did, what kind of person he was, but we just don't know for sure. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's what makes this whole thing so interesting. It lets our imaginations run wild, makes us question everything.
It's like a story that never ends, a puzzle with missing pieces.
Exactly. And in a way, that's what keeps us hooked. It makes us all want to be detectives, to come up with our own theories, to try and make sense of it. The Somerton Man, even though we might never know the whole truth, he still matters to us. Because he reminds us how much we love mysteries, how much we want to understand the world, and that even when things seem impossible, there's always that hope that someday we'll finally find the answers.
So to everyone listening out there, here's something to think about. If you could ask the Somerton Man one question, anything at all, what would it be? What do you think his answer would tell us? Not just about him, but about ourselves and how we deal with the unknown.
Hold on to that question. Let it roll around in your head a bit. Because sometimes the things we never fully figure out are the ones that teach us the most.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Somerton Man. Until next time, keep searching, keep asking questions, and most importantly, never stop wondering.